tour of the Company City tour. Somebody's already doing it, so let's check it out.
Call to Conscience Black History Month. This is the second year that I've done this. I did it last year. I said I was only going to do it once. In November, I started getting calls from businesses and folks and said, "Are you doing it again?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know." By December, I was getting calls from people who were wanting to buy tickets. So, because I'm familiar with people in the community, and I had been thinking about it, I said, let me put this together, put the website together. People are trying to buy tickets. I got to make this happen. And here we are for a second year. So this is not the second annual. It's the second time that we're doing this. I'm not trying to build like an annual event that gets to the 10th annual. This is just something that I think is necessary in the community. And to share information, what you're going to hear is specifically about Seattle African American history. If next year the societal times dictate that there is a different way that is best to communicate and share information that is going to be more impactful than a museum, then that's what I'll do. If next year it seems like the best thing to do is to do this again, then that's what I'll do. So this is not the second annual, it's the second time. Might be the last time, depending on what things look like and how things shape up. So, in particular, I focus on Seattle African American history because Seattle is not Atlanta, it's not New York, it's not Chicago. We have our own unique history. How we survived repression and oppression, how we overcame and continue to overcome the obstacles presented by racism, etc. And understanding that context helps people figure out why we are, where we are at, and who we are based on where we were. And so that's the context that I like to provide to people in this process of doing this. I'm Seattle native. I lived in New York, went to live in New York, went to live in Miami, went to live in Los Angeles, and then decided, I like Seattle. And so I figured whatever I do, I'm going to do it from Seattle. We'll start with you. If you'd like to tell me your name, where you're from, something about yourself, fine. Again, no pressure.
Yes. I'm Tiffany.
And by the way, I'm hard of hearing.
Okay.
And I don't have my hearing aid in.
I'm
so
Tiffany.
I know people are going to be.
I'm
why don't you have your
Seattle
hearing aid in?
From Skyway.
Say it one more time.
I'm Tiffany, born and raised in Seattle, Skyway, Rainier Beach.
Skyway, Rainier Beach. All right.
Yeah.
And I'm Ayana. I'm also born and raised native and grew up in right by Garfield, Central area. Went to St. Therese High School, or St. Therese Elementary School, sorry. But now live in Lake Ridge. This is my neighbor. And so bringing my daughter, Sanaya, and just hoping to give her some of the history of our area and all the ways in the context of what you speak. So I'm excited to hear what you have here today.
Sanaya, would you like to share anything?
My name is Sanaya, and I was born and raised in Lake Ridge, Seattle.
All right. Would you like to share anything?
My name is Vivian, and I was born and raised in Issaquah, Clears Hospital.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lily. So I've been in Seattle for about 2 years. I live in Central District. But yeah, I saw an article about this. I thought it was cool, so we decided to come check it out.
Okay.
Yeah, Braxton, originally from Pasadena, California, but I've been here for about 4 years now. And yeah, she told me about this, and I thought it'd be interesting to check out. So
I'll pass for now.
Okay. My name is Declan. I live in downtown Seattle with my wife Tricia, and I'm originally from Dublin, Ireland. I moved over to Seattle about 12 years ago, so definitely interested in learning more about the history of my new hometown. I think I can, being here 12 years, I think I can just about call myself a local, but I still have a lot to learn. You know?
I still hear a tad bit of an accent. And
Yeah, my name is Trisha. I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, so a Northwest native, but I've been in Seattle for about 17 years, and I've always loved learning about history, and I feel like this history gets overlooked a lot in the general narratives, and it's really important to learn the full story.
all right. Well, we're going to get ready to take the tour.
Tony, I'll go now. So since I skipped.
Oh, that's right.
I skipped. Yeah, me. So I'm Paul Jackson. I moved to Seattle in 1998 after I finished my degree in computer engineering. I did 20 years of research at Boeing in virtual and augmented reality. In about 2015, I changed into digital video. And so I've met Tony, I know, but basically everybody in there. I'm wearing a Black Panther t-shirt or button because the Black Panther Party, the first chapter outside of California was here in Seattle. And then I know Delbert, I know the brother that did the quilts. And so I'm not to say I'm a native, but I know a lot of folks in Seattle. So I won't brag, I'll move on to the next guy. But now I live in Tacoma, so yeah. So the Pierce County, the Black Collective is a bunch of Pierce County African Americans. They meet every Saturday from about 8:30 to 10, and they have met every Saturday for like the last 50 plus years. So yeah, very intriguing. All right.
I forgot that you had the camera.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So this is going to YouTube, everybody. So yeah.
Let me do this. Once you step into the building, you agree that we can photograph you and film you. If anybody is uncomfortable with this being filmed,
I'll cut it off. So everybody cool? All right.
yeah, good. All right. All right. Well then, we're gonna get ready to go. I'll just say, Paul, make sure I get a copy of this.
Of course, it's on YouTube, so you'll get it. All right. And all the other stuff I did for you.
I'm sorry?
All the 360 stuff I did for you back in the day, I hook up with that too.
Let's go on the tour. The tour starts out here. Now, did everyone get a newspaper? Did you get a newspaper? Got one? Got one, here you go.
Yeah, what's your
It doesn't matter, you get your own. That's what they're for. You got a newspaper? Okay. Paul, you got a newspaper?
Not yet. Thank you, sir.
All right. And yes, everybody gets one, so there you go. And another one, and oh, you have two, okay. And one for Sanaya. So everything in this museum is in this newspaper. So you can use it kind of as a guide as we're going through to read more, or if you have questions, or if it generates questions, you can ask me about it. And then when you take it home, you'll remember what was here if you want to show folks. So we start by going out this way. I acquired this building a couple of years ago. One of the first things that I did was I commissioned a young African American man to put a mural here. And so this is the work of Moses' son. And so I just like to show that. Recently, people have been asking me, what is the meaning? And I never asked him what his inspiration was. And so the last couple of groups have said, well, what is it? So to me, it reminds me of music. So I don't know if y'all want to think about that. Or I had someone else come through and said these particular things remind them of some sort of seafood. I don't remember what she said it was. So I don't know. I'm going to ask him what his inspiration was. You may have some thoughts. Then I'm going to have you turn around, and then you see this wall over here. This wall is African Americans and Native Americans who were killed by police. So yeah, that's how we start the tour. Now, I'm going to let me make sure something is that there are a couple of very special guests that are waiting to greet you. So when you come in, please say hello and greet our very special guests, and then step to the left. All right? Ready? Here we go. And then go ahead and step to the left.
Hey, Tony, I know movement makes the Black Lives Matter calendar.
I'm sorry?
The Black Lives Matter calendar. She lives in Tacoma. I know her. I hook up with you. No, I hook up with you. Oh, President Obama. I thought President Obama now turned into nothing. Okay, there we go.
Bye. Bye.
All right.
I didn't see
And
them.
so I'm gonna stand over here if you wanna. You probably know, but not everyone knows, especially our younger folks. Our first African American president was Barack Obama. Our first African American first lady was Michelle Obama, and so I thought it appropriate that we start this off by acknowledging that, because it is history. At some point 20 years from now, folks may not look at it the same way, but this is the history that we are living in. And so, I just think it's a great way to start. I did have the opportunity to go to that very first inauguration, which was amazing. And so for my daughter, who's 21 now, who was 6 at the time, she was like, oh, well, yeah, it's African American president. Yeah,
Dalvin does
it happens all the
We
time.
come all the time. Yeah.
Now that she's older, she's seen how monumental that experience was. So, in addition to the tour of the museum, you also get a tour of this building. This is this Columbia City Theater. This building is 108 years old. It's Seattle's oldest vaudeville theater. It's been a burlesque theater. It's been an adult theater. It's been a movie theater. During the late 60s, early 70s, it was called the Rainier Cinema. It was the only place where you could come and watch what we call black and kung fu movies. If you Google Rainier Cinema today, you'll find nothing. It doesn't exist. That's one of the reasons why it's so important that we document our history and make sure that we write our history. Otherwise, someone else will write that history, or it won't be written and it will be forgotten. So that's just one example. In the 80s, this was one of the top 2 venues in the country for what they call the DIY punk movement. It's been a comedy theater, a number of different things. This very stage that you're standing on right now. The folks who have performed here include Jimi Hendrix, Quincy Jones, Ray Charles, Ernestine Anderson, Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, Macklemore, Sir Mix-a-Lot, who was just here a couple days ago and took the tour. And one of our installations is Nasty Mix Records, and we had a Nasty Mix Records reunion a couple days ago. Also, one of our exhibits is the Total Experience Gospel Choir. Pat Wright, who started the Total Experience Gospel Choir, passed away not too long ago. And for the first time, they now call themselves the Seattle Alumni, Total Experience Alumni Gospel Choir. They performed on this very stage. And I did film that, and so we're going to release that in a bit, but it was absolutely amazing. So this is probably a good time to also tell you that not only we do have the museum, we have events here on the 20th for this month. On the 23rd, you're going to see the Seattle Black Panther Party exhibit. One of the co-founders of the Seattle Black Panther Party, Elmer Dixon, will be here on the 23rd. He's going to be doing a book signing of his new book and doing a lecture. And then we're also going to show a 30-minute editor's cut of the film on the Seattle Black Panther Party, the documentary that will be out, I think, in June or July. And then on the 27th of February, there'll be a lecture here from Jim Tharp, who's the owner of the Hartsfield and Slate Book Collection. So those are some additional things in addition to getting the opportunity to take a tour. So that's a little bit about this building. So as you're touring the building, take a look. It's phenomenal. Again, 108 years old. And then there is the tour, which I'm going to start right now, unless anybody has any questions. No? Okay, there's a couple stairs that we have to navigate. And so I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to ask you to follow me. And watch your step. Down and then back up. Okay. Everybody file up this way so that everybody's up here. This was not an exhibit. Come on up a little bit more so everybody can get up here. This was a wall, like the rest of the wall that was in. And I'm sorry, Paul.
It's all good. All right. One step at a time.
There's only one other large set of steps that we'll have to navigate. This wall is something that I call the community wall. And so this wall, from the first group that came through, I've said, send me something from your family. Because everybody's history is important. And it may be the missing piece to the puzzle. Doesn't matter what it is that you want to share it with me, and I'll put it on this wall. And this is what we've got. I think by the time that we're done, we probably will have this whole wall filled, which is absolutely amazing. And so that's everyone. Please send me, put it on an 8.5 by 11, and you can just email it to me, include a picture and something below. I'll give you a couple of examples. This couple came through and they said, well, we don't have anything. And then his wife said, well, we owned a gift shop for about a year or so. I said, well, send me something. They sent me this. People have come through and taken this tour and went, I know this gift shop. This is where I used to go. The reason why I am so vested in thinking it is important in history is because of this book. This little book here that my mother wrote. I'm the first generation of my family to be in Seattle, and the rest of my family was Arkansas, Texas, and she wanted me to know my history and know my roots, and so she was paralyzed on half her body, but she was still able to travel, and she wrote this little book, and that's why I know my history. At the time, I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't need that. But now I know the relevance and the importance. I know that my 5th generation great-grandmother was from Barbados and came to this country as an indentured servant at the age of 12. Well, we know what that means. um, and I know that my sixth generation great grandfather was Irish and part of the Lewis and Clark expedition, which explains why they had lots of property. And so my fifth generation great grandmother convinced her master, which is what it was, to give her and their children that they had some property so that they could escape some of the horrific challenges presented by slavery. So for me, that's like, oh, that explains why my family had property in Arkansas. That explains, so all these different things. And so I knew the relevance and the importance of 5 generations ago, my family establishing in what area was school. And now it wasn't kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade. It was everybody, grandma, grandpa, uncles who doesn't know how to read, kindergarten, whatever the age, school. And so that's just important for me to know. And this is my mom, and that's me. Another story I'll share with you. This is a gentleman who brought this in. Again, because you never know how history works. This is his mother with Hillary Clinton. This is his mother with Colin Powell. This is his mother with a 4-year-old Barack Obama. Never know how history's going to work. I'm going to give you a brief, because this wasn't supposed to turn into an exhibit. Well, quickly, I'll show you this one too. This was a white woman. She said, and I could tell she was a little like, and she said, "Can I bring something in?" I said, "Everybody can bring something in." And so about a week later, she brought this in, and this was her husband, who was the first African American on a major news outlet in Seattle. He was an anchor person. So again, there's a lot of really cool stories up here. Unfortunately, I have to keep this moving, but I'm going to give you about a minute or two to maybe read some stuff, and then I'm going to ask you to meet me right up there, and we're going to talk about Jackson Street and the history of Jackson Street and jazz in Seattle.
I've never seen it. He's never in person. I've seen him.
So I'll start by asking if everyone is familiar with the history of jazz in Jackson Street. No, not at all. A little bit. Okay. Okay. Familiar with Jackson Street and jazz in Seattle? Okay. Jackson Street and Seattle was a major hub for jazz. That's why some of the names that I mentioned who were here performed at this theater. Because if you were anybody in the world of jazz, you came to Seattle between the 19-teens and early 1950s. So for decades, this was a major place to be for jazz artists. So what made that kind of essential? I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. But first, I want you to get in the mood, okay? And so what we're going to do right now is pretend that we're in 1947 and we are at the Black and Tan nightclub, okay, in Seattle. And there's this artist performing who you really don't know, but sounds good, so you're gonna go check him out. And the other thing that I'll add is that during this time, does everybody know where Jackson Street is? Okay, so imagine Jackson Street between First Avenue and 12th Avenue, no freeway running through it. There were 34 nightclubs. All right, so we are in one of them right now, the Black and Tan on 12th and Jackson, and there's this guy named Ray Charles about to perform.
What year is this?
We're in
50s?
1947.
47?
You must be joking. What you trying to do to me? So I can't be talking over. I thought we had a better understanding. Oh, baby, don't be so jealous. What you say? Well, I guess if you said so, I'm gonna have to pack my things and go.
Okay, I just wanted to get you in the mood. Yesterday, I'm not kidding, I had a couple groups. One was about 6 and the other was about 8. And they start dancing. The group was 6, had 3 kind of really outgoing people, and they started off, and they just got pretty soon the whole group was singing. So that was just to kind of get you in the mood. As I mentioned, Seattle was a major hub for jazz. 34 nightclubs between First Avenue and 12th Avenue on Jackson Street. So what made Seattle such a hub for jazz? Well, there are a couple things. For one, there on Jackson Street, there was integration during the club scene. There were still segregated areas, but at night on Jackson Street, during the clubs, there was integration. Another thing that made it exciting for folks, at night on Jackson Street, there was alcohol. Remember, alcohol was illegal, but not on Jackson Street. And the other thing that was exciting to folks and made it interesting was you had integration, you had alcohol, and you also had corruption. Police department knew what was going on, but as long as the money was coming in, they were fine with what was taking place. And so you add those 3 things together along with this new form of music. Remember, jazz was new at the time. Now it's recognized as an American creation and institution, but at this time it was experimental. So there weren't even a lot of places where these musicians could play. And so from going to the Chitlin circuit all the way up to Seattle, one of the reasons why that could happen was because in Seattle, they could get a hotel. So they'd stay here for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. And then you had 34 nightclubs that you had the choices of playing in. So it was just bananas. Now, everybody also understood the rules. If you were a club owner and the police department or a rogue group of police officers decided that today's the day I'm choosing to come into your club and bust you, well, pay the fine, and then your club would be open again the next night. If you were a black musician and they came in and busted the club, or you were a black patron or a native patron, you would be arrested if they busted the club. But everybody knew how it worked. You were going to get out the next day because they knew you had to go to work. If you were white, you wouldn't get arrested. You get a slap on the wrist and a wink and a nod, and they would tell you, don't come back. You knew you were going to come back the very next night. And so you had African Americans. You had the natives, so this was their land, so they were here. You had Asian Americans. You had the wealthy white folks from across the water, middle-class white folks from this area, all converging on these 34 nightclubs. An amazing, incredible confluence of things that happened and took place. And so it doesn't matter who you're talking about. Cap Calloway, Lionel Hampton, Dizzy Gillespie, everybody, Dinah Washington, everybody came to Seattle to hone their craft and perform. Then Seattle became the gateway to China. China had a fascination with jazz music as well. And artists realized they could go to China and again, not face the same racism and oppression that they faced in Seattle. And that's how Seattle became the gateway for China and China's jazz scene during that time as well. So now I want you to read these exhibits. Before we go to the next installation, I'm gonna give you a couple minutes. I'll just point out a couple things, but please read the panels. And this is kind of a map. I had a better one last year of the club scene right here. Right in here is a 16-year-old Quincy Jones. And so please read the panels, and then we're going to go on to our next installation. And you can take pictures and you can film. That's completely okay. I will say this. I'm going to ask you, there's going to be a pop quiz. All right? Just to see if you've read the panels, I'm going to ask a question. And we'll see if anybody can answer that question. It's going to come from the panels. Couple more minutes. I know, it's a lot, and we're just getting started.
Right behind you. All right, another minute.
Oh, yes. West Coast.
My buddy Ben West.
Yeah, and that, it's very
Lots of one of the things that I enjoy about people see themselves. This is our history.
And I'm sure I feel like these things are watch, may not know.
All right, we're gonna get ready to move on to the next exhibit, which is the Seattle Black Panther Party exhibit. Is everybody familiar with the Black Panther Party? Are you familiar with the Seattle chapter of the Black Panther Party? No. Okay, you're gonna find out more information about that. But before we do that, here's the question. So what happened when the band leader said, "Show me your limit"? Nobody?
The women dancing, they kind of hitch their skirts up.
Exactly. Okay. When the band leader said, "Show me your limit," the women lifted their skirts up.
Yeah.
So dancing was an integral part of the jazz scene in Jackson Street, and you can imagine it must have been all that stuff at that time. Just phenomenal. Okay, we're gonna go to this next exhibit, and so follow me. Come into this room, please.
So Tony, I thought you said lemon, not linen. Lemon. I thought you said so.
Linen.
Linen, yes. Undergarments. I got you.
This person doesn't have a head.
Okay, so I'm gonna have you watch another short document, another short that we put together. And I'll just tell you a little bit of information first. The Black Panther Party was formed in 1966. The Seattle chapter of the Black Panther Party was formed in 1968. The Seattle chapter was founded by two brothers, co-founded by a couple brothers, Aaron Dixon and Elmer Dixon. At the time they formed the Seattle chapter of the Black Panther Party, they were 17 and 18 years old when they started this movement. I had a group of high school students that came in and took a tour. And so when I told them that, they were like, whoa, you could see minds being blown. You know what I mean? Like, what? But those members of the Black Panther Party, 17, 18, 19, 22, 23, 24, some of them had been in Vietnam, but when they came back at 22, 23, they had a skill set that they had learned over there. So these were young folks, again, founded by members who were 17 and 18. Seattle chapter of the Black Panther Party did some incredible things, and you're going to learn more about this and you'll read the panels. One of the things that they started was the free breakfast program. The program that is now a national institution all over the country did not exist until the Seattle Black Panther Party started the free breakfast program in Seattle, Washington. They understood that if our children are hungry when they go to school, they're not ready to learn. That's now a national institution. When you're looking at the panels, there's a menu over here of things that they were. I had a teacher come through just yesterday who looked at that menu and said, "Oh my gosh, this is healthy stuff. That's not what they're serving our kids today for breakfast. They're getting these processed, heavily sugared."
Yep.
Anyway, I'll tell you more, and you're going to learn more when you watch this video. It will add some perspective to who the Seattle Black Panther Party was and their contributions, not just locally, regionally, but also nationally and
Internationally. Internationally.
We have to recognize who our major enemy is. The major enemy is not your brother, flesh of your flesh and blood of your blood. The major enemy is the hunky and his institutions of racism. That's the major enemy. That is the major enemy.
We were so excited to hear that they were coming to Garfield. Of course, we ran out and bought some Ray-Ban glasses that Sophie used to wear. They had been traveling around the country, giving fiery speeches about this new concept we had never really heard, and that was Black Power.
Around that time, we had been, really inspired and awoken. There was that terminology, it's a new day, that was circulating back then by Stokely a year earlier. First high school VSU on the West Coast at Garfield, became a co-chair of SNCC in Seattle, and that all kind of culminated in us going down to San Francisco State for this West Coast Conference of Black Student Unions. And it's like 1968. The Bay Area is alive. You know, there's revolution is in the air. We didn't even know Bobby was speaking. You could tell that he was angry. And he was angry because little Bobby had just been murdered 2 days after MLK. And all standing in a very disciplined fashion. We're talking about hundreds, because it was a funeral of their first fallen warrior, comrade. And so this was the day before little Bobby's funeral. That was the beginning of the Black Power movement. And then we opened the door and came in, and there in the house were all these young people. They were everywhere, upstairs, in here, everywhere. And it was just a shock. I wonder what the house was so full of young people for. And that's when I found out they were planning to join the Black Panther Party.
Seattle was very important to the Black Panther Party. The role that it played in the early days, as well as its entire history, has been a vanguard leadership kind of role in like the Northwest, right? Seattle became the first chapter of the Black Panther Party outside the state of California. There are two views of the Black Panther Party. The one that those of us in the community had who could see the services, things that now are built into the institutions. The other legacy is the one that was in the newspapers and highly influenced by the FBI COINTEL program. So the COINTEL program had a purpose of demonizing the Panther Party.
And I think also the Panthers wanted to make a statement to our people in the country that, you know, a man can't disrespect you if you don't allow him to. And one of the most important things that we have to do as a people in order to get the rights we deserve is we have to force people to respect us. And to make it clear in America, from now on, Black people will no longer allow you to disrespect us and to keep treating us as unequals and inferiors, regardless of the consequences. And they paid, some of them with their lives.
So, like I said, that will add some context to you with the Black Panther Party. I'm just going to say a couple more things, and I want you to look at all of the panels, because this is incredible information that you're not going to find in one space. You may not be able to find it. I do want to talk, though, about the COINTEL program. That was a misinformation and a disinformation campaign that was incredibly successful. They called the Black Panther Party the #1 terrorist threat to the country. The Black Panther Party was a rainbow coalition before there was a thing called the Rainbow Coalition. You could be white, you could be Asian, as long as you were saying we want our community protected from police brutality and police harassment. Women were welcome into the Black Panther Party. This misinformation and disinformation campaign that the Black Panther Party were just this violent group of Black people who wanted to take over the country and kill Whitey. That was the FBI government campaign. That was incredibly successful. The other part of that campaign was to kill and murder Black Panthers. Unfortunately, that campaign was successful. And by 1973, 1974, the party didn't really exist anymore in the strength that it had, because leadership had been murdered. And people had this perception. And today, when I give this group, I had a woman come from Kelowna, BC. She wanted to come down to see this African-American exhibit, and in particular, the Black Panther exhibit. And so when we got in this room, I said a couple things, and she looked at me. She said, "So you were for the Black Panthers?" And, she didn't know. And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, I was one of the beneficiaries of the free breakfast program. And then I, also mentioned that they started that, and I mentioned that they started the first free clinic, which was initially known as the Sidney Miller Clinic, which is now known as the Carolyn Downs Clinic, which still
open
exists today.
Honestly.
So they did a number of different things and were successful in creating a number of different opportunities that within our community still stand today. Again, I'm just going to say this because I think it's important. Remember, this movement was started by 17 and 18-year-olds. So please read the panels, and then we're going to go on to the next exhibit. Now, I may talk, but you don't have to turn around and listen to me. I'll just be saying a couple things. Every Black Panther had to be armed with an M1 carbine semi-automatic rifle. They also had to have bullets. They needed ammunition. You had to have that with you. That was just a start. Again, remember, they were trying to kill Black Panthers. This is the uniform of the Black Panther, the black leather jacket, the black beret, and underneath that, you would be wearing a bulletproof vest. This one's a little different. This one, the bulletproof vest they gave me last year had, you could tell it had shots in it. So somebody's life had been saved by wearing that vest. That's why there's bullets in here, because I'm trying to make it apparent that this was not a game. So imagine you're a 19-year-old Aaron Dixon, and the FBI has a secret offer of $25,000 on your head.
These are bullets?
This that you're looking at right here was a headquarters, and you see all the sandbags, and that's why we have the sandbags down here, is because during a raid, the police would come and fire into the homes for the leadership of the Black Panther Party. And so this is what it looked like. Yeah, that breakfast menu was fabulous.
Still on your bones today, huh?
It didn't really dawn on me, just because I had a daughter who's 21, but it didn't dawn on me what they were serving today. And this teacher was like, oh my gosh, this is not what they give today.
Tiny Tots Development Center down the street.
I'm sorry?
Tiny Tots, the daycare for kids.
Uh-huh.
They serve that breakfast every morning. The
This
kids.
one?
Yeah, my daughter she ate like that.
Wow.
At Tiny Tots is run by a 40, 50-year-old daycare.
Is that Angie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Vivian went there, from 3 months to 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Every morning, cooked in the kitchen, the breakfast.
I know Angie.
You did. Her mom. Bowls.
I'm sorry?
Bowles. B-O-L-E-S.
I don't know.
I'll look around. The founder of that daycare said, exceptional breakfast for 40 years.
Awesome. Okay, a couple more minutes, so please read. There will be no quiz, but this is just for the benefit of you and information that is available to you. So try and read all of the panels, and you can take a picture of them.
I'm a slow reader, so I took pictures.
Yeah, take a picture.
Despite all my education,
I'm sorry?
Despite all my education, I'm still a slower reader.
That's all right. It's lifelong learning.
Yeah.
That's okay. Wow.
Okay, about another minute, not trying to rush you, but just making sure that you get a look at everything. And then we're gonna go to our next exhibit. I told you it's a lot. And there's a lot more to go.
Congratulations, Doc. You did a great job.
So that image over there that you're looking at, they were exercising their right to bear arms. And there had been white militias and white folks that were armed constantly, but they took that image and put it out, and it terrified white folks. Shortly after that, they changed the right to bear arms. You know, I had a gentleman who was downstairs. He was an older Asian gentleman, and he was in the lobby looking around, and so I don't bother people. I just let him look. But he was down there for a while, and he was looking at the newspaper, and so I finally said, hey, can I help you with anything? And there was a picture in last year's newspaper of a group of older Panthers, and there was an Asian gentleman in the picture, and he said, this is me. And I said, oh. He said, my name is Michael. I said, what's your name? He told me his name was Michael Tagawa. I said, you need to come upstairs. And brought him upstairs and brought him into this room, and I had a different set of installations last year, and brought him in, and we looked at this picture, and there he was as a youth in that picture right there. You can't see him in this one, but he's over this way a little bit, in his black leather jacket, his rifle, and his beret, and the name Michael Tagawa on there, and he was just thrilled to death. We had a lot of Black Panthers come through. If you remember, probably was hard to catch because it went by really fast. In this film, one of the Black Panthers had a gun in front of his face. Other ones had them to the side. His was in front of his face. He visited this museum, and he told me, I hadn't even noticed. He said, I had the gun in front of my face because I didn't want my mother to know I was out of school. So you're FBI, all that other stuff, but you're worried about your mom mentioning, finding out that you're not in school because you're at the Capitol with a rifle. Not worried about the FBI, but mom.
Oh yeah. Much closer whip.
So let's go downstairs. This is the last set of steps that we'll really have to navigate. So let's go downstairs, and we're going to go to the next exhibit.
Not the last.
As you hit this corner and turn to the right, there are some authentic reprints of posters, mini posters. Just take a look at them. They have iconic times in Black history. James Brown in the 1970 World Tour, because he put out the song "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." At the time, again, that song was inspirational and uplifting. In 1956, you could have seen B.B. King and Ike and Tina Turner for $1.50. The Jackson 5 and Diana Ross and the Queens for $6.50. And then I'm going to ask everybody just to file on as far over here as you can so that everybody can be, just one stick over here. And so this is the point where we're going to talk about Blacks in film. And this next exhibit that you're going to see is my personal collection. I collect vintage Black movie posters. And so I want to tell you a little bit about Blacks in film. Blacks have been making film since the 19-teens. The 19-teens. We directed films. We produced films. We wrote films. We starred in films. We created films that depicted us as people that shared our lives and stories. And these films were incredibly popular. They were shown all over the country. They were shown in the segregated South. These all Black films. The difference was if in the theater, if the main floor would be for white folks, the balcony would be for black folks. If there was no balcony, then the theater would fill up with white folks, and if there were any seats left in the back, the black folks could come in. This was to watch all black made films, or over 1,000 theaters across the country that showed these films. This was a network. It survived until early 50s. So what happened at that point in time in the early 50s that killed this network of black films? Combination of things. The rising cost of making films, marketing films, making posters, doing all that stuff. The cost just started to rise. Then there was this other thing, immigration. Jim Crow laws getting thrown out, and there was this hope that African Americans now would become part of Hollywood, where the big money was, and big films, and didn't exactly happen that way. White unions continued to not hire black cameramen, black technicians, of course, no directors or producers or anything like that. And then instead of depicting ourselves in movies the way that we chose to depict ourselves, Hollywood depicted us as slaves, maids, servants, porters, and all kind of ridiculous characters. And that is what was presented to the world about African Americans. You probably know who Harry Belafonte is. He refused to make pictures from 1950, I think 7 or 58, until I think 1970 because of that. Nothing against Sidney Poitier, you know what I mean? Or anybody else who was trying to do what they were doing. That was what was happening at the time. And so that's how that turned out. Now, I collect movie posters because to me, I like to see the stories in the poster. It tells the story. You can tell how much money was spent on the poster, how we depicted ourselves, how Hollywood depicted us. And I'm pretty sure that I have one of the largest collections of African American vintage posters. The only other place that I think that you'll be able to see something like this is the African American Museum in DC. Now, I couldn't bring them all here because I could fill up this whole building. I never showed them before until I did this. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should show these. And then I had to figure out what I wanted to show. And so I chose films from the 60s and 70s. Kind of because, I was going to follow the Black Panther section, which followed the Jackson Street section. And it was a time of black nationalist movement. And so that's why I chose the 60s and 70s. So what you're going to see in here are films from the 60s and 70s. For some folks, these films are triggering. I call it confrontation, excitation, and blaxploitation. Confrontation because it was a time again when blacks were saying, wait a minute, we want to be shown in movies. And white filmmakers are going, ooh, there's a lot of money in black film. How are we going to do this? How are we going to make this work? Excitation because there was the hope that there would once again be an opportunity for us to be seen as more than what we were being shown. And blaxploitation, have you ever heard that term? I'll explain to you a little bit more about blaxploitation after you take a look at these posters. So now we're going to go into the movie room. Everybody grab some popcorn and Cracker Jacks, and then not this stuff. And here we go. Oh, you do need a ticket to get into this room, but you paid, so you have a ticket. So come on in and enjoy. And these are authentic movie posters. These are not reprints. Enjoy this collection of posters.
Dr. Step.
Yeah, you can take pictures, you can take video. I'm not trying to hide stuff. I'm trying to get it out there. This is our history.
How can one find and watch?
I'm sorry, say it again.
How can one find and watch these movies?
Well, I know that I think Scarecrow is what they're called.
Are they still open?
They
are.
They
Yeah.
have if you have a VHS or
Yeah. Then you can, yeah.
that's one place, and then you can Google and find stuff in different places. And so,
I was gonna say, a lot of stuff is streaming now,
yeah.
and so Amazon's got everything.
Yeah, I'm hoping that you leave. Oh, one thing that I forgot to mention to you about that other room. So just for a second, I'm gonna stop you. You've all probably heard about a racist film called Birth of a Nation. Yep. You ever seen it? Watch it. It is a racist film. It depicts African Americans as savages, hell-bent on raping white women.
Blackface.
A lot of people have heard of it. A lot of people have not heard of Within Our Gates. Within Our Gates was produced by Oscar Micheaux. He was like the godfather of black film. He started a black film production company. So Birth of a Nation was in 1915. In 1920, Oscar Micheaux released a film called Within Our Gates, which was a response to Birth of a Nation. So everybody knows about Birth of a Nation. I bring that up and that triggered for me because I wanted you to remember. If you've watched Birth of a Nation, go back and watch Within Our Gates and see the response from a black filmmaker to that very racist film, Birth of a Nation. And if you haven't seen Birth of a Nation, go back and watch that too. Anyway, go take a look at the posters.
So was the Oscars named after the brother? The awards that they give out every year?
No.
No? I heard it was named after, given. So, I mean, depends who you talk to, right? So, yeah. I'm surprised I don't see oh, he went to France, Van Peebles. I don't see any Van Peebles posters.
Yeah, it was a little bit later.
Right, that's true, a little bit, yeah.
But that is part of what I will talk about blaxploitation.
Okay, thanks.
Were there any black filmmakers during the silent era?
Good question.
Yeah, we've been to Silent Movie Mondays at Paramount. I don't think
Oh,
I've ever shown,
yeah.
I don't think I've ever shown a black film. They had like some with like Asian actors and make trails.
This book was sat by the door.
Yeah, I was invited to come out and done that.
One sneaking back there, hiding back there.
And they have like an organist or
The
something.
live organ back from the 20s, like they've kept it since then.
Wurlitzer or something?
Yeah, the maybe Wurlitzer.
Yeah, that should definitely be.
And they'll usually have
big
a
part of
talk
that.
afterwards as well to like set context and everything of
With
the
an
time.
with an expert or somebody who knows about the filmmaker and everything.
I read this book.
That would be amazing.
So has anybody heard of cornbread really mean? No? Oh my gosh. All right. Does anybody know who this is? No? Have you seen
Lawrence Fishburne?
Yeah, have you seen The Matrix? Have you seen John Wick? Have you seen what? This is Lawrence Fishburne. You know, I'll point something else out. Some of you may know. Does anybody know who this is? Oh, I thought I did an answer by now. So what I ask people if they don't know who this is, have you ever heard of Darth Vader?
Yeah.
Oh, you ever heard of Mustafa from The Lion King?
Yeah, wow.
This is the voice. This is James Earl Jones, who was an amazing actor. beyond just being the voice of Darth Vader and the voice of Mustafa. And he was also an advocate for fighting for African Americans to be presented in a different light than they were. So now I'll talk about blaxploitation a little bit. So like the Mac, I mean, I wanted to see these movies. I couldn't wait to see Superfly in this very theater. Cleopatra Jones, the Mac, everybody was excited about seeing these films because it was black people and they were like us, and it was cool. And to some extent, they were like our neighborhood, but not our entire neighborhood. It's a portion of our neighborhood. So what later the reality was that white filmmakers were making these movies. Black actors weren't making a whole lot of money. And then in addition to that, these white filmmakers were making movies that were depicting us as pimps, as hoes, as drug dealers, as criminals, and over-sexualized. And that's why they became known as blaxploitation films. But what that did do was it led to the rise of people like Melvin Van Peebles, who were like, we have to make our own films. And Spike Lee, we have to make our own films. And so, yeah, that's where blaxploitation came from, you know. But take a good look. I'll give you another minute or two. Like I said, the thing about me was I like the imagery. I had a white family standing around this picture right here for Boston Moose, and you see what it is. So again, people who may or may not know the movie, some of these things are triggering. I know Uncle Tom's Cabin. Some people come in and they just go, I'm not looking. But you know, it is what it is. Had a lady come in about a week ago, got in the room, and that's like the first thing that you see. Within, seriously, I'm not kidding, 10 seconds, she was crying. And we were like, oh, you know, she said, no, it's okay. She said, my sister just passed away, and that was her favorite movie. So regarding this film, it was a white family that was gathered around this poster. And so again, I don't bother people. I just let them look and they think what they want to think. But so finally I said, is there anything that I can tell you about this? And the young lady looked at me and she said, this is it. I'm like, okay. She said, this is it. This movie was filmed just north of Linwood. And she said, our grandfather was always telling us that beyond his backyard, Richard Pryor was filming a movie, and this is it. He wasn't lying. So again, every people come in and they see themselves in this, because it's not just African American history. See how it's everyone's history. And I know we're going to get ready to go to the next exhibit, so I'll give you about another minute. I didn't even mention Rudy Ray Moore. There's so much to see in here. If you're not familiar with Rudy Ray Moore, he was an icon in the black community because he said, I'm making a film. Yep. Familiar with Rudy Ray Moore? No. Oh my gosh. Familiar with Rudy Ray Moore? So this movie, when you watch it, Petey Wheatstraw, the Devil's Son-in-Law, it's not an A movie. It's not a B movie. It's not a C movie. If you were to categorize it, you'd probably call it a W movie. All right? You watch it now, and it's just kind of ridiculous. But the point was, he was like, I'm making a film. And he made a film. And in the black community, people were like, ooh, this, because he was a black guy who made a film. He also made another film that's a little bit more popular called Dolomite. You might have heard, and they actually remade that film recently. And so you'll hear a story. Does anybody know about the signifying monkey? A lot of people don't. Watch these movies and you'll find out. And someone says about the signifying monkey, you'll be like, I know about the signifying monkey. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you, you have to watch it. And I saw you come over and look at this, and this really triggers people too, the spook who sat by the door. Right. Yeah. You read it?
Yeah, I did read that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what it's about.
Yeah. It's interesting, yeah.
I had someone come in, and it took a lot to get this turned into a movie.
Yes.
And it's a watered down version of the book.
Right.
So I would say read the book if you want to find out. But don't watch the movie, watch the movie. And a woman came in last week, and she was in here and she wasn't over here. And so I was leading people into the next room. She went, "Oh, you have this? Oh my gosh." She's really excited. She says, "I'm from St. Louis." And then she said, "I remember when I was 12 years old, going to the Fox Theater because that was the place where we could watch these movies." And she said, "We were so excited about this movie coming out. They only let it run for 2 days and then they took it away."
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Makes sense.
anyway, just more movie night stuff. Let's go this way. And follow me in here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about everything in this room, and then I'm going to let you take a look at everything. So I'm just going to introduce everybody to a little bit of everything in this room. Missing a couple people. All right, here we come.
Sorry.
Is that everybody? Are we missing a couple people?
Maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I know it's a lot, and it's a lot to see.
She says, okay, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. Has everyone had Ezel's chicken?
Oh, yes.
Everybody's had Ezel's chicken. Even only one person that has come through this exhibit, I'm serious, has said, "I've never had Ezel's chicken." And this dude was very familiar with his, but he said, "Okay, I'm going to go get Ezel's chicken." So Ezel's famous chicken is iconic in our community. I'm going to let you watch this video in a minute and learn more about it, but it took them 6 years to get the loan to get started.
Wow.
They were facing redlining, they were facing discrimination, they were facing all of these things. They celebrated their 40th anniversary February 3rd. So after taking 6 years to get that first loan, and then 10 years of being in the red, 10 years of being in the red, losing, they believed in what they were doing. So today, they've went from 1 store, they now have 17 stores.
Aren't they in Dubai?
They're in Dubai as well. They're in Spokane, they're in Oregon, and yes, they're in Dubai. So it's an incredible success story. You may or may not have heard about how Oprah tasted the chicken and then told the family, "I'm flying you to Chicago so you can make chicken."
Wow.
So that's that. But come back and look at that. Over here is did you know that Seattle had a Negro League team?
Yep.
Seattle had a Negro League team called the Seattle Steelheads. Read more about that, and they played in the West Coast Negro League team. Does anybody know about the quilt codes?
Yep.
Okay, quilt codes. Quilt codes were code, which is right back here. The quilt codes were codes that enslaved people, they would put codes in quilt patterns to communicate with each other. And the quilt codes were also very instrumental in the Underground Railroad. The reason why you haven't heard about it, or if you do hear about it, is academia will say that the quilt codes did not exist.
Right.
That it was made up. That African Americans could not have figured out how to communicate to each other. So, the reason why they say the quilt codes did not exist is because there's nothing written down to validate and verify that the quilt codes exist. So I'm going to make this really, 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 really simple. If you can get killed for learning how to read and write, why would you write down the quilt codes? The other thing about it is this is just meant for the people who are supposed to know. Why would you write this information down?
Exactly.
As time went on, quilting continued. And so families would continue to make quilts with codes in them. But depending on where you live, if you lived in Tennessee, if you lived in Alabama, if you lived in, for people who quilted, the messaging got changed a little bit. That's another reason why they say the quilt codes didn't exist, is because they say, well, in one part of the country it means this, and in another part of the country it means this. Well, by the time you get into 1910, 1920, 1930, that's gonna happen, you know, where people put their own little things in there. I'm here to tell you that the quilt codes did exist. This is the Hartsfield Quilt Collection. This family has quilted since they were enslaved. You're not going to see anything like this. This quilt right here is from 1850. This quilt survived slavery. So when you think about that, think in terms of there were no Joannes, there were no Michaels. If you got material, you used it for clothing because you needed clothing. So these quilts, they weren't just to hang over the quilt line to give messages. They were used them to sleep. They were worn. They had to carry stuff in them. These quilts were used for everything. That's why the quilts didn't survive. But there are codes in this quilt. There are codes in this quilt. And there are codes in this quilt. There are codes in this quilt right here. The quilt codes did exist. African Americans were savvy and smart enough to figure out how to communicate with each other without their oppressors and their enslavers knowing about it. And this is proof. And this is an article right here in the Seattle Times on the gentleman Jim Tharp, who has the Hartsfield Quilt Collection. I'll tell one brief story, then I'll tell you, then you look at all this stuff. So he has one quilt of the family quilts from his great-great-great-great-great-grandmother named Miss Molly. She was considered to be a master quilter. Remember, other than that, you had to time out of whatever scraps you could find, and probably in the at night and with whatever instruments you could find. So the precision in making these things is amazing that they did that. So Miss Molly's quilt, they let her make one quilt to keep for herself. Other than that, all of the quilts she made were for her master and her master's friends. But she got one quilt to keep for herself. And she kept it. And they passed that down in the family. That quilt has blood stains all over it. Because the one quilt that she was able to keep was also the quilt that she was raped multiple times. So this down here is the installation of Pat Wright and the Total Experience Gospel Choir. They performed in 22 countries. They performed for 2 presidents, President Clinton and President Obama. 3 members of the Total Experience Gospel Choir actually were finalists for America's Got Talent. Pat Wright died last year, and the group kind of disbanded. And so I contacted them and said, we need to do something so that people remember who you are, you know, because that's how our history gets lost. And the gentleman that I talked to told me the story of what happened. He said, well, he said, first of all, thank you. And he said, but we don't have a lot of stuff. I'm thinking, yeah, 38 years of history. So what happened was when Pat died, the house had to be sold. Not whatever the details are, anyway, the house had to be sold. So the new owners got the house, they said, clear all this stuff out of the house. Pat kept all of her memorabilia in one room, the back room of the house, her awards, her clippings, her everything, and so everything had to be done in such haste, and all that stuff that she kept in the back room was stolen. That's not an isolated incident when it comes to African Americans. That's why I say a lot of our history is treasure chests, trunks, attics, basements, and as elders die, youth go, what are we gonna do with this stuff? That's why I'm encouraging people, and that's why we're doing this, to understand how important history is and how it fits into the piece of the puzzle. Yeah, there's some big things, but little things fit into the piece of that puzzle and figure it out. That's why I said to my mother, so, oh, this makes sense. You know, all the stuff that went on, it's the same for everybody. Over here you have the Buffalo Soldiers exhibit, and it takes the time to look at this. Buffalo Soldiers fought for this country before the Civil War. Primarily they fought against the natives as there was this westward expansion. And so what the government would do, would they throw these black soldiers out there to test the water, you know, to see how vicious or whatever the fight was going to be. And so it was actually the natives that called them Buffalo Soldiers because they said that they were courageous and tough like buffalo, but then also the matted hair as well. This is William Cathay. William Cathay was a Buffalo soldier. William Cathay then joined the United States Army, except William Cathay was actually not William Cathay. William Cathay was Kathy Williams, which made her the first woman to fight and join the United States Army. Once they found out that she was not a he, she was dishonorably discharged, her pension was taken away, and she was humiliated. But she was the first woman that fought for the United States Army. This exhibit over here is from the Black Prisoners Caucus. They've never done an installation before, but I thought it was important to have them in this installation. So if you can imagine what was going on outside as far as racism and oppression were concerned, in the prison system, it was worse. And you had African Americans who were in prison who shouldn't have been in prison, but it was worse. And so in 1972, they partnered with the Seattle Black Panther Party. They formed in 1972 the Black Prisoner Caucus. They also partnered with the University of Washington Black Student Union to come in and teach classes. And they started teaching math and history. Eventually, they started teaching associate degree level coursework. They even started teaching undergraduate degree level coursework. That was a major accomplishment at that time for the Black Prisoners Caucus. Something else that they did was they created the free bus program so that people who had incarcerated relatives would have a way to get to the prison because they were usually far in remote areas, folks didn't have car room. They did a number of things. I've asked them, I'm like, hey, you need to write, big panels so people can go. This is their exhibit, so I just leave it the way it is because I get it. If the most important thing that you want to say is here's people who are incarcerated, they shouldn't be incarcerated, let them free. So that's the only message that they put out. But I do tell the story of what they've done. So they went from one prison, the Black Prisoners Caucus, to being in 12 prisons for the Black Prisoners Caucus. So I'm going to turn on this video so that you can hear some Louis Rudd at your leisure. Please take a chance and take the time to look at everything for a few minutes, and we'll go on to the next exhibit. The dolls that you see here, these little black dolls, are over 100 years old. Yes, 100 years ago, black families wanted dolls that looked like them too, but they had to make them for themselves. So, yeah, and you can read the story on quotes. You can listen to Louis Rudd talk about Brazil's famous chicken.
Hey, it's your man, not your boy, Dr. Jackson. I hope you enjoyed the tour today. Phenomenal, amazing. I'm glad I did it. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate all this stuff. And it's not the last time. Hopefully you'll do it again next year. Peace.